Okay guys, so I'm going to do a quick recap video and just talk about a couple of things that are going to help us later on that I haven't touched on. But in the next video, we're going to get into the fun stuff. It's going to feel like you're actually coding. So this one, we're just going to do a quick recap. First, like I was saying, this is going to help us later on. So in every language, there is a sort of a way of writing yourself notes inside of your program. JavaScript, the way to do that is you take and you put 2 forward slashes. And do you see how it turned gray there? So watch when I write this. This is called a comment. Now, what happens when I run this file is that it's actually not going to read this as code. If this is just text, the computer skips right on over this as if it's not even there. Doesn't even touch it. This is incredibly useful. This is highly recommended when you're writing code in a professional level, and I can tell you from experience, you write yourself a program and then you come back to it 6 months later, a lot of times you have no idea what you were thinking. It really does help out. There's a lot of developers out there who just say like, oh well, you just read the code. Yeah, it's not that. Man, this is just English is straight up easier. All right, it's just how it is. It's the natural, it's the way your brain thinks, right? So we're going to use this a bunch now. Let's touch on some things. Well, actually, let me touch on one thing that is important that this sort of implied. So we've already established, let's make this easy. We've already established if I do this and remove these quotes, this is no longer going to be of the type string. And if you also notice, the color here changed. Now, why did it do that? Every language has its own sort of color scheme. In the beginning, it's kind of weird to wrap your head around, but this helps identify what things are in the program. Okay, what's a better way of explaining that? So this right here is, as we've established, this is a string. This is text. Right, the computer reads strings as plain text. This is not a string. It actually tries to read this as a variable. And so that's why, for instance, in this entire, everything inside of these quotes is orange, including this exclamation mark and this comma. And that's because it reads this entire thing as a string. This, on the other hand, well, here's what I'm just going to go over what this is. You're not entirely going to understand all this, but this right here is a variable, and it's never been established inside of here. So this is going to fail, obviously. This right here is what you would use if you're adding multiple params inside of a function. This is what's called a function. This is another variable, which would be another param inside of this function. This is going to break because this wouldn't do anything. You'd have to put it here for it to do something. That would negate the value of this variable. But as you can understand, this is totally different from this. That's why they're colored differently. It helps you to understand the types of things. It helps you to understand the syntax of the language a little bit better, a little bit more clearly, and it's incredibly useful. So I'm just going to run this and I'm going to show you something. Hello is not defined. Right. But as you'll notice, it did not run this line right here. And why is that? In every language, excuse me, not every language, but most languages will read from top to bottom. And when it encounters an error, it will stop. So when it encountered this line right here, it literally just stopped. It actually says it stops at, and then this is the file that we're running in right here. It stopped at line 2 right here. And it will not continue on to this line right here. And that is how most languages operate. They will read from top to bottom, and if they encounter an error, they stop. They will not continue. That's actually useful to know if you're trying to find bugs and you don't necessarily know where the bug is. Well, you can just start putting console logs in there and see where your console log doesn't show up. You can see, well, how far is it getting to? That's a little bit more complex, but this principle is extremely useful. It's like that in most languages you'll encounter. It reads from top to bottom. So in the last couple of videos, we talked about variables. We're going to touch on that one more time. Just quick recap. It's a variable stores information that we can use later. Don't necessarily have to have a semicolon there. This a is now equal to 1, and I could now use that anywhere I want as a. We're going to comment this out so it doesn't get in the way. I'm going to run this. It's going to print 1 because we've stored 1 inside this variable a. We also talked about types. And, well, for instance, if I put quotes around this now becomes a string. In JavaScript, I can find the type of something by using type of. Click print a, and that's a string. So first it printed this right here, and it printed the type of a, which is a string. Okay, so another way of thinking of a string is, because I can put anything I want here. And we'll print all of that as plain text, and that's a good way to basically think about this. This is just plain text. This is stuff that you would put on a web page, for instance. This is what you would store everything in to print out on a page. All this on this page, for instance, this is going to be a string inside of their program. So is this, so is this. That's another way of thinking about it. Alright guys, in the next video we're going to talk about syntax, and we're going to, like I said, get into the fun stuff, actually start doing some cool code. Okay guys, thanks for watching.